All right, so today we're looking at some pretty serious drama,
Oh, yeah.
and it's all about home renovations.
Mm-hmm.
You guys sent us a ton of articles about the show Windy City Rehab.
Yeah, this one's been popular.
And
Lots to unpack.
yeah, it seems like all those beautifully staged homes on HGTV
Right.
were hiding a whole lot of trouble.
Yeah, pretty much.
So we're going to go deep into the legal battles,
It's
the
mixed.
construction nightmares, and the homeowners who are left
Yeah.
picking up the pieces.
Yeah, the homeowners definitely got the short end of the stick on this one.
Oh, for sure.
What I think is most striking about this whole thing is just the sheer number of people who were impacted by this whole situation.
Right.
It's not just the homeowners who, poured their savings into these properties.
Yeah.
But we're talking investors who lost money,
Oh, yeah.
even subcontractors who are left completely unpaid.
Wow.
It's just this huge web of allegations and legal proceedings.
Yeah, and it all kind of seems to center around the show's hosts, Alison Victoria and Donovan Eckhardt,
Right.
who were flipping these houses in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the show itself ran for 2 seasons,
Yeah, just two.
showcased a total of 16 homes,
Yep.
all of which have since been sold.
As of July 2021?
Right, but even after that final sale, the legal fallout just continued.
Oh, yeah, this thing's been dragging on forever.
So it really seems like the problem started pretty much as soon as the show premiered.
Yeah, that's right, back in January 2019.
Wow.
Homeowners almost immediately started reporting all kinds of issues.
Like what?
Leaky roofs, shoddy workmanship permits that were just totally missing, like they never even applied for them.
Oh, wow. So let's try to break this timeline down a little bit.
Okay.
It sounds like season 1, which featured 11 properties, aired from January 2019 onwards.
Right.
So when did those first lawsuits start popping up?
Well, some of the earliest legal action came from homeowners like James and Anna Morrissey.
Okay.
They bought the Lincoln Square home
Hmm.
that was featured in the massive Getting Street rebuild episode.
Right.
They closed on the house in April 2019.
Okay. And just 1 day later,
Oh, no.
they had this massive leak in their supposedly renovated bathroom.
That's brutal. Talk about a housewarming gift you don't want.
Seriously?
And from what I read, that leak was just the tip of the iceberg for them.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
They ended up with this huge list of problems.
It was bad.
A leaky roof, crumbling masonry windows that didn't even close properly.
Yeah, it was like the renovation was purely cosmetic.
Right.
Like no attention was paid to the actual structure of the house.
Wow.
And that seemed to be a really common complaint among a lot of these homeowners
Yeah.
who bought properties that were featured on the show.
That's crazy.
Another couple, Shane Jones and Samantha Mustachio,
Okay.
they bought the Bucktown home
Mm-hmm.
from the House of Horrors episode
Oh, yeah, I remember that one.
in August 2019,
Right.
and they had a ton of problems too.
Well, that episode title turned out to be pretty prophetic, didn't it?
Yeah.
They were supposed to be getting this beautifully renovated house.
Yeah, for $1.33 million. But they ended up with a garage they couldn't even use because of all this unpermitted work
Mm-hmm.
and a whole bunch of other issues.
Like a sewage smell in the basement.
Ugh.
Their story is just really heartbreaking because they were planning to use that garage for Mustachio's Pilates business.
Oh, wow.
So they were like investing in their future and it just all came crashing down around them.
Yeah.
The stress and the financial burden must have been just enormous.
It's just so disheartening to read about these experiences.
Yeah.
It really makes you wonder about these home renovation shows.
For sure.
Are they really about making dreams come true, or are they just selling a fantasy
Yeah.
that falls apart as soon as the cameras stop rolling?
I think a lot of people are asking themselves that question now.
Yeah.
And you know what's interesting is both of those homeowners we just talked about,
Hmm.
they bought their homes after season 1 aired.
Right.
So that means they had a chance to see at least part of the show
Yeah.
and the renovation process.
Makes you wonder if they saw any red flags
Yeah.
while watching.
Yeah, but it's easy to get caught up in all the excitement,
Yeah.
seeing those transformations on screen.
For sure.
The show focuses so much on the before and after,
Hmm.
all those design choices, the drama of,
Yeah.
tight deadlines.
Right.
But they conveniently skip over all those nitty-gritty details about permits, inspections, building codes.
Right. And that's where the real problems often lie.
Exactly.
A poorly executed renovation can have, really serious long-term consequences.
Absolutely.
And it seems like the Windy City Rehab projects were just plagued by those issues.
Totally.
So faced with all these mounting problems, what did these homeowners do?
Okay.
They just bought these homes. They were likely already in debt.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're facing thousands of dollars in repairs.
Right.
I mean, what recourse did they have?
So in both of the cases that we talked about, they ended up turning to the legal system.
Okay.
The Morrisseys, for example, they initially tried to get the sale reversed. They were basically saying, this house is not what we were promised, take it back.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like returning a faulty product.
Right.
Did that work?
Not really. The Windy City Rehab team wasn't exactly eager to take back a property with so many problems.
Right.
So they weren't having it.
So what happened then? Did they just give up?
Not at all. Instead of giving up, they kind of shifted their strategy.
Yep.
And they focused on getting financial compensation for the repairs and all the distress that they'd been through.
So instead of returning the faulty product,
Right.
they decided to get it fixed, but at someone else's expense.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
So what did they do?
Well, they actually amended their lawsuit,
Okay.
demanding the purchase price back, along with every single cost
Wow.
related to buying and repairing the house.
So they were going for it.
Yeah, they were, and they weren't alone.
Really?
The homeowners from the House of Horrors episode, Shane Jones and Samantha Masaccio,
Right.
they filed their own lawsuit too. So it sounds like these lawsuits were getting pretty complicated.
Oh, yeah.
Multiple parties involved,
Mhm.
potentially huge sums of money at stake.
For sure.
So who else was named in these lawsuits besides Alison Victoria and Donovan Eckhardt?
Well, in a lot of cases, the lawsuits also targeted Eckhardt's development company, Graymark Development Group.
Okay.
They were essentially the ones handling the actual construction work.
Right.
So they were being held responsible for that shoddy workmanship and all those code violations.
So it wasn't just about design choices
No.
or personality clashes between the hosts.
Right.
It went much deeper.
It did.
It was really about the competence and the integrity
Yeah.
of that entire construction team.
Yeah, absolutely. And as these lawsuits started piling up, a pretty clear pattern started to emerge.
Okay.
Allegations of cutting corners, unpermitted work, financial mismanagement.
Wow.
It wasn't just like one isolated incident.
Right.
This seemed to be a systemic issue
Yeah.
that just plagued so many of these Windy City rehab projects.
So we've got homeowners dealing with these nightmare renovations,
Yeah.
mounting legal bills.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like the legal drama wasn't just confined to these disgruntled homeowners.
not at all.
Who else was getting involved?
Well, this is where things get even more interesting.
Okay.
Investors who had put money into these Windy City rehab projects,
Mhm.
they started to feel like they had been misled about how profitable these flips were going to be.
Oh, wow.
Some of them claimed that they suffered substantial financial losses,
Yeah.
and they joined the legal fray too, filing their own lawsuits against Victoria and Eckhardt.
So it sounds like this whole Windy City Rehab empire was starting to crumble
That's a good way to put it.
under the weight of all these allegations.
And the situation was about to get even more complicated
Oh, no.
because the city of Chicago itself was about to enter the scene.
Oh, that can't be good.
Nope.
Tell me more. What happened when the city got involved?
Well, the city of Chicago took these allegations really seriously. They launched investigations into a bunch of different Windy City rehab projects.
Okay.
And what they found wasn't pretty.
Uh-oh.
There were times where work had been done without the necessary permits.
Right.
Some really obvious violations of the building codes.
Wow.
Even cases of unlicensed contractors being hired to do the work.
Yeah, for a lot of people, permits and building codes might just seem like
Yeah.
bureaucratic red tape,
Right.
but they exist for a reason.
Absolutely.
They're meant to make sure that the construction is safe
Mm-hmm.
and high quality.
Totally.
It's not just about how it looks.
No.
It's about making sure that these homes are structurally sound
Right.
and that they're safe for the people living in them.
Exactly. Cutting corners on things like permits and inspections can have some really serious consequences.
Yeah.
And in the case of Windy City Rehab, those consequences were really felt by the homeowners.
Yeah.
Who were left dealing with all this shoddy work and potentially even dangerous living situations.
So what did the city actually do about all this?
Okay.
Did they just issue a warning, or were there
No.
some more serious repercussions?
They weren't messing around.
Oh, yeah.
The city issued tons of stop work orders on Windy City Rehab projects.
Oh.
And they completely stopped construction until
Wow.
they fixed all those violations.
So they really put the brakes on these projects.
Oh, yeah.
That must have been a huge blow to their production schedule
For sure.
and their bottom line.
And the city wasn't done yet.
Oh, really?
What else did they do?
So you remember Donovan Eckhardt?
Yeah, the co-host.
Right. He was the one with the construction background.
Mm,
Well, he was also running his own development company called Graymark Development Group.
right.
And they were the ones actually doing all the construction work for the show.
Okay, so Graymark was the company behind all of these allegedly botched renovations.
Exactly.
So what happened to them?
Well, the city of Chicago temporarily suspended Eckhardt's contractor's license,
Wow.
which meant he couldn't legally do any more construction work in the city.
They also suspended both his and Alison Victoria's permitting privileges.
What does that mean?
So that meant they couldn't start any new projects
Right.
until they fixed all the problems with their current ones.
So they basically shut them down
Pretty much.
until they cleaned up their act.
Yep.
That's a really strong message from the city.
Yeah.
It shows that they weren't going to just tolerate this disregard for building codes and safety regulations.
Right. And, in all of this, it's easy to forget about the homeowners who were
Okay.
stuck in the middle of all this.
Yeah, they were the ones who ultimately suffered because of those bad renovations.
Exactly. Did they get any justice?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Well, a lot of them did file lawsuits, as we talked about.
Right.
And they were trying to get compensation for all the repairs, the financial losses, even the emotional distress that they'd gone through.
Yeah, and I remember some of them even tried to get the sales completely reversed.
Yeah.
But it sounds like that was really difficult.
It's pretty hard to undo a home purchase.
Yeah, it's not like returning a sweater.
Exactly.
Buying a house is a huge financial commitment,
Right.
and there are legal contracts involved.
Yeah.
So let's go back to those lawsuits for a second.
Okay.
What were some of the specific allegations that were being made against Victoria and Eckhardt?
Okay, well, the lawsuits alleged all kinds of issues.
Like what?
Starting with just shoddy workmanship,
Right.
using really cheap materials,
Okay.
all the way to unpermitted work and financial mismanagement. Wow. There were even claims that Eckhardt's company, Graymark,
Right.
had bounced checks to subcontractors.
Oh, wow.
They didn't pay them in full,
Wow.
and sometimes they even hired unlicensed workers just to try and save money.
Wow. It's starting to sound less like a series of unfortunate mishaps.
Yeah.
And more like there was a pattern of deliberate negligence.
Right.
Was there any evidence to support these claims of financial mismanagement?
There was a ton of documentation included in those court filings.
Like what kind of stuff?
Copies of bounced checks, contracts with subcontractors that hadn't been honored.
Wow.
Even emails and text messages where homeowners were basically begging Victoria and Eckhardt
Oh, wow.
to come and fix these problems.
That must have been incredibly frustrating for them.
They were dealing with houses that were literally falling apart. They were out thousands of dollars, and they were just trying to get the people who sold them these houses to take responsibility.
Yeah, and to add insult to injury, they're living in these conditions.
They have to deal with the leaks, the crumbling masonry, the faulty wiring.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just an inconvenience. It's a threat to their safety
Totally.
and their well-being.
Yeah. And on top of everything else, they just feel cheated and lied to.
Right.
And abandoned by the people who are supposed to create their dream homes.
Exactly.
Speaking of feeling cheated,
Yeah.
I remember reading about some investors who felt similarly misled.
Oh, yeah.
What were their complaints?
So a lot of investors who had put money into Windy City Rehab projects said that they were promised these huge returns,
Okay.
but they ended up losing a ton of money.
Wow.
And they alleged that Eckhardt especially had lied about his expertise and his connections
Okay.
and basically just painted a picture that wasn't real.
So essentially they were alleging fraud,
Yeah, pretty much.
that they were promised one thing and they got something totally different.
Exactly. And that Eckhardt had basically used their money irresponsibly.
So it sounds like this whole situation was just a complete mess.
Yeah,
From top to bottom,
pretty much.
homeowners facing these construction nightmares,
Right.
investors claiming financial losses,
Mm.
the city of Chicago stepping in and really cracking down.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine how anyone involved in all this could come out of it looking good.
Yeah, you're right. And as all these legal battles were going on,
Yeah.
another twist emerged, which really complicated this whole story even more.
There's more. This is where it gets interesting. So we've got homeowners suing investors, suing the city, breathing down their necks, and now a defamation lawsuit.
Yeah,
I'm getting whiplash just trying to keep up with all this.
it is a lot to keep track of.
So in the middle of all of this, Donovan Eckhardt files his own lawsuit. But this time, it wasn't against a homeowner or an investor.
Nope.
It was against the show's producers.
He went after the people making the show.
That's a wild twist. What was his problem with the producers?
Well, he basically claimed that they intentionally portrayed him as the villain on the show to add more drama and to boost the ratings.
Ah, so the classic reality TV villain edit.
Exactly.
I guess he wasn't too thrilled about being painted as the bad guy.
Not at all. He claimed that this portrayal caused him emotional distress,
Okay.
and it damaged his reputation, and that led to financial losses.
So did he win his case?
He did not.
Really?
The lawsuit was dismissed.
What happened?
Did the judge not buy his argument? It wasn't really about whether his claims were valid or not.
Okay.
It all boiled down to a clause in his contract
Okay.
that stipulated that any legal disputes had to be settled in California.
So a legal technicality basically sunk his case before it even got off the ground.
Pretty much, it's a good reminder to always read the fine print.
Yeah, the devil's in the details,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to contracts.
For sure. But you know what's really interesting? Amidst all this legal drama and all this finger-pointing,
What?
there's this little detail in the articles
Okay.
that really stood out to me.
Okay, tell me more.
So Alison Victoria claimed that her signature was actually forged
Oh, wow.
on several really important documents.
Like what kind of documents?
Loan applications, lien waivers.
Forged signatures.
Yeah.
That's a serious accusation. Who was she saying forged her signature?
Well, she filed a lawsuit against a notary public named Adriana Rodriguez,
Okay.
claiming that Rodriguez had actually notarized those forged signatures.
So if that's true, it means that someone else might have been involved in all of this.
Right.
That really throws a wrench into things, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. If Victoria's claims are true,
Okay.
it could mean that there's this whole other layer to the story
Mhm.
and that maybe someone was working behind the scenes,
Yeah.
manipulating these documents.
Wow. So we've got potentially forged documents, lawsuits going everywhere, and a lot of unanswered questions.
Definitely a messy situation.
Windy City Rehab is way more complicated than just bad renovations at this point.
Absolutely.
So in the end, what happened to all those homeowners?
Right. What was the resolution?
Yeah. Did they ever get any justice?
Well, unfortunately, the details of most of these settlements
Mhm.
aren't public.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I guess legal settlements often have confidentiality agreements
Exactly.
to avoid further bad publicity.
Right. So while we know that a lot of lawsuits were filed, the actual outcomes,
Yeah.
including any financial settlements that they might have reached,
Right.
those are all secret.
It's frustrating. We're just left wondering, if anyone was held accountable,
Yeah.
if the homeowners were able to recover their losses,
Yeah.
if justice was actually served.
It is a bit frustrating, but, I think the bigger takeaway here is that this whole Windy City Rehab story is really a cautionary tale.
Yeah, I think you're right.
It highlights how important it is to really do your research,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you're making a huge investment like buying a home.
Yeah, don't just rely on what you see on a TV show,
Exactly.
no matter how glamorous they make it look.
Right. Get an independent inspection, do your research on the contractors,
Yeah,
and don't be afraid to ask a lot of questions.
yeah, because a beautifully staged house
Right.
can easily hide so many problems.
Absolutely.
Well, after this deep dive, I'll definitely be looking at those home renovation shows
Me too.
with a much more critical eye.
Yeah. It's a good reminder that reality TV isn't always reality,
Right.
and that sometimes those dream renovations can turn into total nightmares.
Yeah. And for our listeners, we hope that this deep dive has given you some insights into just how complicated
Yeah.
this whole Windy City Rehab saga really is.
It's a story about broken dreams,
Yeah.
legal battles, and really the importance of holding people accountable for their actions.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So remember, knowledge is power.
Stay informed, stay vigilant, and always ask questions.
And we'd love to hear your thoughts on this episode.
Yeah.
What surprised you the most?
Right. What other deep dives would you like to see us do?
Yeah. Until next time, stay curious.